Well, Canada's spy agency is now investigating allegations of rape and sexual assault, looking into its British Columbia office after a group of whistleblowers spoke to the Canadian press. They were complaining about a senior officer, and one accused him of raping her 9 times in a CSIS surveillance vehicle. And for some reaction, we're now reaching out to Huda Mukbil. She is a former CSIS intelligence officer who a few years ago sued the federal government over alleged racism, sexism, and harassment in the force. She also wrote about it in her recently released book, Agent of Change, My Life Fighting Terrorists, Spies, and Institutional Racism. Ms. Mukbil, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, the allegations being raised in this investigation are really just shocking. You were involved in a lawsuit and won. Do the allegations come as any surprise to you?
It doesn't come as a surprise. Unfortunately, as the director himself has stated, there's been and continues to be apparently a culture that is really toxic for women and minorities at the Canadian Security Intelligence Service. And it is really unfortunate. And, you know, these allegations of sexual assault are quite serious. I'm glad that the Prime Minister has commented on it, raising the issue, you know, to a level that it needs to be raised, because these women work in national security, protecting their countries in really sensitive environments. So I feel for them.
And you say you're not surprised. What is it, do you think, about the culture of CSIS that allows this type of activity to continue?
Well, CSIS, much like the RCMP, much like DND and other national security organizations, the way that it was structured, so it's hyper-masculine, there's hierarchy, there is group thinking, and minorities and women have not held power within these organizations. And so they tend to, there tends to be a lot of abuse towards these communities within these institutions. It's a structure, it's the culture. And unfortunately, because the issue has not been taken seriously, much like other departments, and they've not tackled it in a serious way, it continues to happen.
Now, the CP investigation into this, they say that concerns had been raised. You say so yourself as well. Nothing had been done about the agent who allegedly raped and sexually harassed these female agents. I'm wondering, given that there was no reaction to those concerns being raised, would you compare that to...
Can I correct you? Actually, there was a reaction. I'm sorry, there was a reaction. Okay. So what CSIS is now conducting a climate assessment of the Vancouver office. So the 2 ladies are from the physical surveillance unit in British Columbia. And so there is a climate assessment that's being conducted. And the individual that is the perpetrator has been taken out of the workplace. So these are 2 measures that the organization has taken now, but it needed, you know, the issue had to go public for them to take action. So that's problematic. It's also really problematic that they are, you know, the courts, what the court said is that they lack jurisdiction. They want the women to go through the internal processes. The ladies are arguing that the grievance processes don't work, and that was my experience as well, that the system itself doesn't work. Much like the RCMP, DND, they can't be policing themselves. There needs to be that outside intervention. There needs to be, you know, our review agencies, both NSI COP did, this is a National Security Committee of Parliamentarians, did a study on diversity, violence in the workplace in 2020, and there needs to be a review and further work, but it can't be left to the agency. There needs to be that outside intervention.
And just to be clear, I agree with you. What I was referring to was before it went public, there was complaints that concerns had been raised and nothing had been done. But you say it needs to go to a third party. What would that look like? You gave a bit of an indication, but concretely, what do you think this actually has to be?
Well, first of all, I don't think CSIS should be fighting these women in court. And these are public funds that are being used in a situation where they've already admitted that the processes in place have not protected people, and that there is that toxic work culture. And so they need to make sure that they're not appealing those and fighting with the women that have come forward, which I consider really brave, to break ranks and to come forward and really risk their careers, their financial security, their just personal security as well, because these are people who are doing some dangerous work following, targets of the service, people of interest. And so they need to support these women. That's the number one thing, but also to make sure that this doesn't happen to other people who are vulnerable within these types of institutions. A lot can be done. These outside review bodies can, when they conducted the assessments in 2020, they didn't interview anybody that's gone through these processes. They simply looked at documents that these institutions provided and provided an assessment. So there needs to be that involvement of people who really know what these issues are. People who have lived experiences, such as myself, with these issues and concerns that are so problematic within CSIS as well as other national security organizations.
And now, as you say, the women who raise this are doing so, risking their own careers, going through their own challenges of stepping forward to say this has happened. I'm wondering if you might share, because as we said right off top, you yourself called out the force for racism, sexism, harassment. What did that do to you?
It was a very difficult thing to do. I worked for CSIS for 15 years and completely dedicated myself and the other 4 that came forward. We tried inside to implement these changes. We found the resistance and we had to as well risk our careers, our financial stability. Our families were affected. There's mental health considerations. It's a very difficult thing to go through this alone, and not to feel that the organization that you signed up for, that if you've been working for, is not supportive of the complaints that you're bringing forward. So really difficult time for them. And so the quicker that closure comes to this particular case, the better.
Are you hopeful in any way that real change will come about because of this?
I think it's a working progress, but we need to make sure that there is that outside intervention, that there is transparency, that there is accountability, and that we're constantly looking at making further changes. And so it's not going to happen on its own, and the organization itself can't be trusted to do it. They can't be policing themselves. We know this from DND. We know this from the RCMP. CSIS is no different. In fact, I think it's really important to really tackle this at CSIS, given the fact that it's such a secretive organization, and there's a real risk when people come forward and report these things to the media or seek outside support. I think that the Prime Minister commented and said that there is going to be they're going to be closely monitoring and following up on this, and I hope that they do that, and I hope that these other agencies are provided with a mandate to investigate what is really going on and really speak not just to management, but to the individuals, to people that are working there that have those kind of lived experiences.
Huda Mukbil, I really appreciate the time. Thank you for the conversation.
Thank you.